I work on the commercial team. I specialize in multifamily properties. I've done as small as duplexes, all the way up. The smaller ones seem to sell better in Arizona. The bigger ones move a lot slower. So what I'm going to go over today is kind of like what you would see in the MLS and what that looks like. We'll go over that. So who am I? I am originally from Washington State. I lived in the Seattle area. I went to the University of Washington. I worked at Boeing. I worked at Microsoft. I was a really good Seattle girl. I just really hated the rain. So here I am. I naturally have curly hair, so that just doesn't mix. I am a mom of 2 daughters. They are 13 and 10. They are the reason for everything I do. I like to show them that, that everything's possible, because in commercial, it is still a good old boys club, and I love going in there and shaking it up. It's one of my favorite things. So we scroll through LoopNet and we see a bunch of dudes, and I'm like, someday that's going to be mom's face everywhere. And I am a secret Real Housewives junkie. So it's all the West Coast ones. I don't know what it is about the East Coast ones. I'm not a fan, except for the New York one that's out. I'm kind of vibing with, but that's who I am. So you kind of heard from Aaron, but I'll just reiterate why kind of partner up with us, because there's a lot of houses that don't work with residential agents. They don't take your referral, they don't answer your phone calls, they think they are above us, they just don't, and that's fine. Come talk to us. There's no patronizing here. There's no, we will help explain and walk through the process. Whatever your comfort level is. You want to partner up? Let's partner up. Let's do it. You want to just hey, I just want to pass off this referral to you. I don't mind taking 20%. We will extend the same great service you have already given your clients. We don't want them. We don't want to sell their houses. We have no interest. We just, you had someone move here from California, and now they want to open a restaurant. We can help with that.
Yes, I can.
Yep. Because the danger of practicing outside your scope. Your broker will not cover you if you are getting sued. Your E&OSHA insurance will not cover you if you are getting sued. If something happens, you are in a lot of trouble, and nobody will back you up, because, especially with my home group, Mark and Jeremy were smart. They provided you an entire department to talk to, and you did not talk to them. So there is no excuses. We see it all the time, kind of the after the fact kind of thing, and it's a big deal. I don't know if you're at the round table earlier, he was talking about lawsuits. Again, where can you find commercial deals? This is where. It's the MLS for some of your smaller multifamily. I'd say 10 units and less get sold a lot on the MLS. CoStar, LoopNet, and Crexi. And like we were talking about before, LoopNet is very Zillow-y, except worse, because there's no rules. They can just leave it up. You can ask to cancel it, and they'll still leave it up because it's getting good clicks, and they just like the traction it's getting. Half the time it's just outdated. We don't have to take it down. We don't have to mark it under contract.
90% of the time. Let's be real.
I was being generous.
That was kind, Carla.
Yes. So what's the difference, right? Because I know you learned in real estate school that a 4-unit is residential and a 5-unit is commercial, but why? No one really knows. Somebody made up this number once upon a time, and they just decided that that's how it was going to work. So when you are talking residential multifamily, you are talking 4 units and under. So that's 4-unit, 3-unit, 2-unit. There is different financing. For a residential multifamily, it's just like how you guys do it. It's ran on comps, maybe a price per door kind of thing. It's incredibly frustrating because it's still an investment property. Do you remember the one we worked on and it came in under appraisal? There's no reason that should have happened. And it's because they still drew the mile, and they still if you've ever tried to comp it, it's not in a neighborhood. You can't just pull properties out of thin air and be like, well, that sold for that across the street. Well, if you've ever been in Phoenix and you cross Thomas, right, it's priced here one way and it's priced here another. So if you were doing that principle, well, then they should all be priced the same, and that's not how it works, because you can get more rent for this one than you could for this one. 2-bedroom's not the same as a 1-bedroom, and so on and so forth. So it gets a little frustrating with some of the 4 units and unders if an appraiser has not done multifamily properties before. And then the financing is very similar. You can use a residential loan to buy 4 units and under, just like you could do with the house. That's, if you're familiar with the term house hacking, it's where it came from. It's because you can live in 1 unit and get residential financing and rent out the others. And not all lenders understand that either. So then your commercial properties, 5 units and up, it's done differently in terms of financing and appraisal. You have to have commercial financing. And the appraisal is done on the performance of the building, right? How is the building performing? We'll go over cap rates and stuff in a little bit, but that's up to the financial. They evaluate the financials of the building. They do everything the investor is doing to make sure that this is something the bank actually wants to lend on, not because it could perform some way, and we'll go over that too, but it's how it's financially performing. Okay, so this is probably what you're kind of used to seeing. If you're in the MLS, this is very much what it looks like, right? And that's a lot of information. And if you have looked through most listings in the MLS, this is not complete. So this was mine, that's why it's complete. But you go in and you're like, there's zeros everywhere, it's garbage. Like, what is going on in here? How am I supposed to get a financial picture? And it's, they haven't taken this class. So, some of the information you have to go over are what appliances are included. And it's really important because that means the landlord is now responsible for that appliance. Whether that is a refrigerator, washer, and dryer. That's why a lot of landlords don't actually like washers and dryers, because now they have to repair them or replace them when they break down. So that's all super important. The parking is very important, because if you have a 2-bedroom unit and you only have 1 parking space, is that going to kind of jive with the tenant? No. Then you can't rent it for as much. That's really what this all boils down to, is how much can I rent this property for? What's the feasibility of getting more money out of it? Exterior amenities, same, because the landlord needs to know what they're going to have to be paid for and what they're responsible for. And then we go over to income and expenses. This one is, if you see the source of financial data, there's 3 options in the MLS. There's projected pro forma, there's, I think, actual by owner, and then there's by account or something like that. If the owner has not provided P&Ls and expense statements, it is always pro forma. If you have to make up any of these numbers, it is a pro forma. And what a pro forma means is how it could perform in the future. If you do what I'm telling you to, if you put in washers and dryers, if you add more parking, you could get more rent. Or sometimes they're under rented. That happens a lot. I don't know if you've called on any and you're like, hey, what are the rents on this? And the first answer is, well, they've been in this unit for a long time, so it's only like $600 and it should be like $1,300. It happens all the time because a lot of these are owned by out-of-state investors and they just don't know what our market has been doing. So then they're under rented, so then you have to do it on pro forma because no one's going to buy that on the actuals, because that would decrease the value of your building. So your operating expense is the money coming in. The vacancy allowance, this goes into the NOI that we'll go into. That the standard number we use in Arizona is 5%. You could probably use 3 because we rent really well, and what that means is how long does it take you to rent out a unit, right? It could be 0. It could have been 0 the whole time they owned it, but you can't say 0 because somebody can move out the next day, especially if you're going to double their rent up, to $1,300, and now you have vacancy. And vacancy creates turnover, right? You have to paint it, to clean it, you have to get it ready. It costs money. And so, gas, insurance. You will get, I cannot tell you how many owners that will tell you, I only pay like $1,000 a year. And you're like, you do not. I don't know what kind of policy you're doing with whatever high deductible, but that shouldn't be a thing. And you don't know if they have an umbrella, you don't know what the next person's going to need. So your best bet is to do a pro forma of what about it should be, because you don't know what the next person's going to want, and you don't know what the current person is doing.
So how do you know what to do?
You can call a local insurance broker and kind of ask them what they think their opinion is, or just for me, I've just seen enough of them that I can usually tell what that would cost. Landscape expense, you'll see it's 0 in there a lot again. Well, it's all rocks, and somebody's still gonna rake that, somebody's still gonna pull weeds. I don't care if you pay your nephew or if you actually hire a landscaper, it's not actually 0. Legal and accounting is commonly 0. Maintenance, same thing. They'll probably say 0. So what you're saying is the HVAC's never gone out. You've never had a backed up toilet. You've never had anything. This is a pristine unit that nothing's ever happened in. The likelihood of that is actually 0. And then management expense, you'll see that as 0 a lot too. And they're like, well, I've owned this since, whenever, and I live a mile away, I manage it myself. Well, the next buyer may not. The next buyer may be from out of state. The next buyer may need property management. So you should always put that in your number. I think this one I did at 8%. And then water, sewer, trash, ask them for bills. Like, just straight up, let me see the utility bills. Because you need to know what the tenant pays and what the owner pays. So commonly, the tenant pays electric, gas, cable, and the owner pays water, sewer, trash, collection, landscaping. The reason why a lot of most properties, I'd say almost all, I think I've sold 2 unicorns, which is means that the tenant pays for everything and they're sub-metered. Sub-metering costs, what did we say, Aaron, $40,000 or something crazy per door?
Well, for your water meter, the thing that the cities
Yeah.
get to control when they do a new development, the permits are kind of a small cost, but where they get you is because they control the water. So when they put in a water meter, it's very, very expensive. So this entire building is on 1 water meter. Because right now, getting a water meter is anywhere from 40 to 60 grand
Yeah.
for the water meter, for them to come in and set it.
So if you have 4 units, right, I mean, that's a huge expense. Isn't it a lot easier to say, you know what, I'll just pay for that? Because there's no break even at that point in probably the lifetime of your investment.
Question.
Aren't there
Yeah.
companies or ways you can put sub meters on and kind of keep track of it?
There are,
separately?
it's there's something you can put on the meters. It's like an additional attachment that kind
It
of
goes into each unit, so
Yeah.
yeah, you can
Yeah.
sub-meter it. It's about 1,000 to 2,000 a unit to do that, so
Yeah.
not bad, right?
Yeah.
Right.
When compared to
Very
Yeah, I
40,000.
sold the unit, townhome.
Yeah.
That they built in Scottsdale.
Yeah. What a lot of people do is what we
There's a
call.
company that managed them.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've done one in Phoenix. It was a 16 unit. A lot of people do what's called a RUBS instead, rent utility buyback system. So for even number's sake, you have a 4 unit, your bill is $100. You tell each tenant they owe you $25 every month.
Yeah.
Illegal in some states, not illegal in the state of Arizona so far.
And
Yes,
this
sir.
will be applied to lots of other things as well. The rubs.
I own a few townhomes and there are meters in each
Yeah.
of those. I think they'll put in later on, and it's facilitated by a company called Utility Submetering System.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I
So
saw.
they,
Yeah.
Like one
they do
unit
that.
that I
Yeah.
sold was like that.
Yeah, so that's good that it was already done for
Yeah.
you, because that could be a huge expense. So then you have to make the determination, does it make more sense to just charge the tenants to just pay for it myself, or to pay, $1,000 a unit? And the one that I sold, it's been a few years now, the 16 unit in Phoenix, that made sense for them to do the $1,000 per unit and put that investment into the property. He was a wholesaler, so he probably got it for a pretty good deal.
Are these numbers per apartment or for the total?
This is for the total.
Total complex?
Yep. So this was only like a 5 unit, so that's why they're fairly low. So that's why that's so important. And why? Because it affects their bottom line, right? They need to know what they need to pay. They need to know what numbers are coming out of their pocket every month. And so it's super important that these are basically this is a list of questions you're asking initially as you get a financial picture of what's going on, so that you can adequately put the finances in. Because why? Because of the NOI. Because that's how you get to cap rate. So okay, who here has heard cap rate? Right. It's thrown around all the time, and it's what does that even mean? It's just a calculation. It's kind of an off-the-hip number, because as you can tell, you can make some of those numbers up, which means you're making the cap rate up. So it's up to the buyer to then do their own calculations and their due diligence so that they can come up with their own cap rate or their own NOI. And then the next question I always get is, what's a good cap rate? Well, that is super subjective, right? Because it has so many factors like interest rates going on, area, what do you intend to do with the property? Also, a higher cap rate is not always better. It doesn't mean you're getting a better investment. It likely means it's a riskier investment. A low cap rate actually means that it's a nice, safe investment. Like Starbucks are super low cap rates. Those are like, they can hover around 4%. Multifamily was trading around 4% not very long ago, and it's barely starting to come back up because that means people are devaluing their building. So, and the way you get to that is you take the net operating income, which that is, or the gross operating income to get the net operating income. Gross operating income is super self-explanatory, right? Rents, how much do you charge for rent? If it's 4 unit, $1,000 a month, $4,000 a month, right? But it's also other expenses or other income you have to take in mind. If there is a laundry unit and it's coin operated, that's income. If you're charging for pets, that's income. If you're charging for storage units, that's income. If you're charging for covered parking versus non-covered parking, that's all income. So that all gets added together to equal your gross income. And then you take those expenses we were talking about and you start adding them up and you just deduct them. Vacancy rate, the reason why that's so important is because it goes into your NOI calculation. And then this is just the math. So if you could totally Google how to calculate NOI. Like, I don't need to tell you. And it's really just addition and subtraction. It's just putting the right numbers into the right places. And then that's how you get the cap rate. So if you ever wonder how do they get these cap rates, that's how. Hopefully they collected all this information accurately, and that's how they're arriving at the cap rate. But as you saw in my previous example, that was all pro forma. That was one of those buildings in Mesa that he has owned for like 50 years, and they were finally selling it, and all the rents were like $300. It should be like $1,200, so I kind of had to make everything up. And it was accurate, it was a good investment, but it's still like, they're still subjective. You may not agree with what I think the landscaping cost is every month, or you may not need it, and now your cap rate's higher. Okay, that was like fast and furious. Is there any questions on any of like NOI calculations, cap rate calculations? Yes, sir.
Are you finding people are still working with just regular cap rate, or are they liking like the cash on cash, ROIs,
So,
other formulas?
It kind of depends on the investor. Like one of the terms I have on here is GRM, gross rent multiplier. It's just the price divided by gross rent. And a lot of these are just kind of off the hip numbers. It's like dating for investments, right? So you can swipe one way or another. Not gonna want that. That's only a 4 cap. I'm looking for something higher. And then you kind of dive in. So it really depends on the investor. Like I have an investor who he goes off GRM. Like he's like, don't send me anything under over a 12. Okay, like that's just how he does it. But it's literally kind of an off the hip number because they're all subjective. Like unless you are, and then even I have a deal right now. I have a 35 unit we're trying to sell for $11 million. So that's what the seller wants. And even then, they're like, our math isn't adding up. Your NOI and my NOI just aren't matching, even though I'm literally looking at the P&Ls. Like it just doesn't seem to matter. And like I said, a couple years ago, we were trading around a 4 cap. I saw even lower. I saw like 3 sometimes. It was crazy. And now this one's at a 4.2, and we can't sell it. And it's because of interest rates. Yeah. So if you kind of look at interest rates as like a guide, right? Call them 7% right now. That means your cap rate should be around 7% just to break even on your investment. So that means technically the cap rate should be higher. So if my seller bought that, I think he bought it 2 or 3 years ago at $6.5 million, dumped a ton of money into it. In order for it to sell at what the cap rate should be at right now, that's only like $7.5 million. He probably dumped more than that into it, so he's just going to hang on to it.
your question, why can't the property be viewed before it's in the
Yeah, so that is a very common question I get when, after this class, you know, when people call is, why can't I see the property? And it boils down to the tenants. Tenants get scared. They kill deals. So imagine it, you are living in an apartment, you know, maybe you and your spouse and a couple kids, and now people are just walking through it all the time. That's not gonna happen. And if you find out that it's for sale, that's gonna freak you out. It's the middle of the school year. What if I have to move my kids? What if they raise my rent? What if they kick us out? What if they don't take my dog? What if they, like, and they panic? You're messing with their home, right? And so if you allow people to continue to go through their unit, you're really gonna freak the tenants out. And scared tenants blow deals. Scared tenants destroy units. There's a lot of damage that can
Don't pay
happen.
their rent.
They cannot pay they could just be like, F you, you're selling the building, what are you gonna do?
So
Yeah.
how do you do that?
So the way that,
The buyers,
Mhm.
how do you?
so hopefully the listing has decent pictures, it has good financials, and you can get a glimpse of what's going on with the building based on the listing, which is why accuracy is so important. At least that's what my listings look like. So, and the way I get in and do photos as a listing agent is I tell the seller, you know, if you don't have any recent photos, we need to get in, and I need to at least get eyes on it. You can either tell your tenants, which I leave that up to them, and I kind of tell them some of the pros and cons of that, or we can tell them that we need we're getting new insurance, and then we need some new insurance photos, and we, as a baseline of, you know, what the condition of the property is. And then
But
yeah,
make sure the photographer knows, because as a tenant, I've been told by a landlord that they were taking insurance pictures, and then the photographer's like, so why are you guys moving?
yeah.
Like, oh, God.
Yeah, that's what, there's a very small list of photographers that I use for mine. Yeah, and that's just because we've, you know, worked together a lot, and they know to keep their mouth shut. And they just sit there and snap, that's all. I don't know, ma'am, I'm just here to take pictures, yeah. But, so if you've evaluated the financials, and you've, you know, maybe driven by it, general condition of the property, you should be able to, in residential multifamily, they require an offer, and that's typically because they don't know that there's things like letter of intent and things like that. I require a letter of intent. There is no reason for me to disrupt a tenant if we are gonna be far off on price, right? Like the $7.5 million offer I got on the $11 million building, you think I'm gonna let them see the inside? No way. We are so far off that this isn't gonna happen. So I need to see how close we are, what some of your terms are. Let's do some pre-negotiating first with that letter of intent, which is what it's for. Before I let you see the building, I wanna see proof of funds. I wanna see if you have private money financing. I wanna see a letter. I wanna know how you're gonna pay for it. I wanna know if you're syndicating it. I wanna know who your investors are. I have a lot of questions.
I was just saying, that's a lot of questions.
That is a lot of questions. Yeah, and it's because my job is not to work for you.
What
If you're
does
the buyer.
syndicating mean?
Syndicating is almost like crowdsourcing for money, is how I explain it. Like, yep, you identify a building, you start saying this is what the building costs, and then you know, start asking your friends, family, the internet, whoever for money to then pay for the building. And then there is an agreed upon return, should be an agreed upon return that they are getting out of their investment.
Creative financing.
It is one way of creative financing, yeah.
So in real world scenario,
Mm-hmm.
it's a two-part question. Do the buyers come and actually see the condition of the building from inside, or they just pretty much look at the numbers and make a decision?
They pretty much look at the numbers and make a decision. That's where the kind of the letter of intent comes from. Let's talk about, you know, what your financing looks like and stuff. Then we can see the interior. We may already have a purchase contract in place, we may not, and then we start negotiating it. It kind of depends on the buyer.
Are they interested in looking at the building, or they say no?
Some of them don't care.
Yeah.
I've sold full buildings where the new owner never even stepped foot in it.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
never
not
even
lots
looked
of
at it.
buyers that are
And,
out of state,
yeah.
even international buyers.
Mhm.
Second question is there such a thing as inspection in commercial world?
Yes,
Yeah.
like absolutely, yeah. So, and in our purchase contracts, our inspection periods start at 30 days.
Yeah.
So like if it's like my 35 unit, somebody would probably ask for more like 60, maybe 45 if they were really good and efficient at what they're doing. But some of these like mega buildings that you see, they're not gonna do 30 days. You can't get through all those units. You have to inspect every single unit, and then all the roofs, all the ACs, you know, whatever that looks like. Every single one has to be inspected, and sometimes it can take a full week just for the physical inspection, let alone the financial inspection. Because now you need to like divulge your P&Ls, your expenses. I mean, we need to go through your accounting. It's a fairly involved process.
Would it be,
And
it
who-
would be 30 days, sorry, if it's under 4 units?
No, that because that's typically the AAR contract and
Okay.
10's already built in. I
Okay.
very rarely see it changed
Okay.
off of 10. But if you are selling a 4 unit or under, there is an addendum. That's the 1 to 4 income producing property addendum. So even if you were selling a rental property, a single family, you should be using that addendum. There's also a SPUDS for it as well.
And so I'm sure this inspection is quite involved and quite expensive for large buildings, so buyer pays for all of it, or?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that, and they should, right? Sellers shouldn't pay for it because that could be seen as bias, right? Well, I hired my inspector to go do that, you know, and we should just leave off a few things, right? And now later you find out that that's a problem, that's a huge lawsuit. The liability that can come with some of the multifamily can be huge because you're not just talking one unit, you're talking many units. I used to work for a brokerage where she was working on Performa. She was very notorious for it. I'm sure you've all probably seen some of her listings. And she was like, you can totally get these rents there if you just add a washer and dryer in each unit. Once you get a washer and dryer, you can get an extra $200 a month. And they were like, great, sold. And she took both sides. And so once they added the washer and dryer and they couldn't get the $200 extra a month in rent, she had a lawsuit on her hands and she got sued for it. Yeah. So it's like, that's why I am super conservative when I am doing performas, because I would rather get in trouble for giving you too low of numbers than ever over-promising and getting sued after the fact for something like
So
that.
she got sued by the buyer?
Well, she represented the seller and the buyer. So yeah, and she got represented by the buyer
Yeah.
because the buyer said, hey, I put in washers and dryers and you told me that you sold me this property based on this cap rate, this NOI, because it was on Performa, because I could put in washers and dryers, and I did that and I couldn't get it.
Did she create the addendum?
No, she didn't create that.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like thinking this realtor who specializes in she's all in downtown and that's all she does, and she created the addendum for multifamily. So I'm like,
If it's the person I'm thinking of, I could see her saying that, but it's not true.
okay. Yeah, she's like, I wrote a book, blah, blah. Yeah,
She wrote a book.
Okay, so that is the same one.
It might
Okay.
be.
Yep.
Does she got some big eyelashes?
I haven't looked at her. I haven't seen her in person. I talked to her over the phone. I was like, you're full of. I was
Just
like,
spill
okay.
the tea.
I'm just saying, there are a few out there,
Yeah.
and I know who they all are, and she's one of them, and that sounds like something she would say.
Yeah.
That is not true.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to give initials?
Starts with an L.
Oh, no.
No?
See, that's another one.
That must be another one.
No, I do know her.
Yeah.
She wrote a book too,
Say it.
and she did not create the addendum.
Okay.
Oh.
She's like, you can buy my course
Oh, yeah.
for multifamily.
Isn't she the fourplex queen?
Something like that. Yeah.
Plus. Yeah.
I've heard that name.
Yep. I know her too. She's not very nice.
That's what I talked to her and I was just like, yeah, you're not gonna push that down my throat. Bye,
So
bye,
it
Felicia.
Yeah, seriously.
It sounds like pro forma, you can make it up, you can cook the books.
You
and-
really can, and that's the
Right.
danger of Performa. That's why we kind of go through it as part of this class, because it's likely what you're going to be looking through. If you don't have access to CoStar, what do you have access to, right? So you're looking through there, and even on CoStar, we sell things on Performa sometimes, depending on the asset, and it is literally, what is it? It's whatever I said it was.
I was gonna say it's very subjective because
It is.
I mean, if you're doing standard, like, you know,
So it's like totally buyer beware, or?
Yeah.
well, that's your inspection. But like, I do a lot of short-term, mid-term rentals instead of like, you know, month to month. So that's gonna be different, and it's gonna
Right.
be show. You know what I mean? So
Right.
my
That
numbers
could
are gonna
make
be
your cap rate higher.
exact way
Yeah.
higher. So
Yeah.
that's what I specialize in, and I'm just like, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's literally whatever I say it is. If I want to say that they paid 0 for landscaping, I could say that. Is that smart for me to do? No, it's not smart for anybody to do. You should probably be conservative with those if you're selling it, right? Because you're selling it based on this financial performance. And if it cannot financially perform that way, then you are going to be in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Make shit up conservatively.
Yeah. Or just know what you're making up. Be able to defend it.
Carla, can you speak to the commercial financing?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe how it's different, or it's harder, easier?
It's just different. So the commercial financing is based on the performance of that building, the actual performance of that building, right? So they're gonna do everything I was asking. It's a lot of questions. They're gonna ask all those same questions. They wanna see the financial health of it, to make sure they wanna lend their money out on it. There's creative financing. There's ways to get around that. I've sold underperforming buildings and you have to do a bridge loan, but that's risky, right? Because what if the market crashes? What if interest rates go up? What if, another balloon is due?
Is there any personal guarantee attached to those commercial loans?
I haven't seen one on a multifamily property. We see,
They're usually non-recourse.
yeah, we see them in other commercial assets, but I haven't seen any on multifamily.
So could it be done with an LLC
Yeah.
and limit your liability, and if it fails, you kind of walk away from it?
You can. A lot of them still want to see your personal financials and put you on the loan. Yeah. And that's how they're getting around that. Yeah. So even if you buy it in your name and then switch it to your LLC, it's still not it may save you from lawsuits in terms of if someone gets hurt or anything like that, but it's not gonna save you from if the loan comes due or if you default on it. Yeah. So, and in commercial financing, we typically have balloons, right? And so it'll be amortized over X amount of years, but it balloons in typically, call it 5 years. It means it's due. So what are you gonna do? So that's kind of what the speculation around the commercial market is right now, is like, well, everybody was buying things like wildfire 2 years ago. If they have a 3-year balloon, that's next year. If they have a 5-year balloon, that's in 2 years. So you see a lot of investors holding off because they think there's going to be a fire sale in a couple of years. We'll see if they're right.
What's the interest rate? It's about maybe 7% for 30-year residential conventional. What's the interest rate for commercial?
I've seen like around 9, I'd say, for a performing asset. It goes up and down. It depends. It depends on what the lender has an appetite for. So if they want multifamily, then yeah. If they're like, we're not touching multifamily, then they just want a loan on it.
Yes,
If they
lenders
want
in-
an office building,
Sorry,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Lenders in commercial are very specific, so that's another common call we'll get, like, hey, I need a lender for commercial.
What?
Okay, so what are you doing? Because lenders that do multifamily do multifamily. Lenders that do office, lenders that do owner-user, or I'm running a business out of it, only do owner-user. There's very few that overlap. If they do, they're usually a commercial broker,
Right.
lending broker, that brokers it out to multiple banks to find out who's got an appetite for it. And the interest rate will vary on the deal. If it's a performing asset, you might get a better interest rate. If it's a non-performing asset, you're going to get a higher interest rate.
Yeah.
It'll depend a little bit on you, especially if well, let me say it this way. It'll depend a little bit on you if it's performing. It'll depend a lot on you if it's not. The crazy thing is, the bigger the loan, the easier to get. So if you can show a track record that this is not my first rodeo, I have done multifamily and I started with a 4-plex and I got an 8-plex and I got a 12-plex, and you're buying a 100-plex now, but you've shown a track record with years of experience, they'll probably just give you the loan.
Right.
They're probably not even gonna vet you. They're gonna be like, oh, this guy's got, assets, they got money, this property's performing, it's gonna pay for itself, it just needs a good manager. Boom. Those bigger loans are easier to get 9 times out of 10. It's the craziest thing. But you wanna go get a $200,000 loan on commercial? Not gonna happen. Most of them have a cutoff of about $1 million. If it's under $1 million, you're probably paying cash unless you're an owner, operator, user. If you're not, if it's investment, don't even come to the table because they're gonna want 50% down, your firstborn child and everything else to get that loan done. If it's over $1 million, chances are investment, you're 30-40% down depending on the performance, et cetera, et cetera. So it all varies based on what it is.
And I can tell you a couple of years ago, they were giving away multifamily loans like candy, and
Oh,
their appetite has quickly tightened up about what they're willing to do and at what performance.
Yeah.
And then same, we're seeing in office too, there's a lot of them, they're like, we're not loaning on
They
office
won't even
anymore.
touch it.
Nope.
Even though Phoenix is a completely different market
Yeah,
and
they're freaked out.
fantastic
Yeah.
on office, they won't touch it.
And just like residential agents, we cannot stand the big banks. They have no respect for contract times, they take forever. There's little communication, we always prefer a broker over them. I mean, we'll take whatever the buyer's working with, but.
I will say my experience in buying a couple of my multi-families, PennyMac surprisingly got it done, and there was time I sucked. It was horrible.
Right, yeah.
But they got it done where a lot of even private money lenders, I was just like, well, this is what I got to work with. So I was shocked.
Yeah.
And I got 3%, 4% interest.
Wow.
That's a couple
Right,
years
yeah.
ago. But it's just
Yeah.
it's
Did it
just,
have a balloon on it too?
no. Well, because I'm not buying as high,
Yeah.
that many doors.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I got 2 at 3% interest rates.
Nice, that's great.
Amazing.
Hold
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, hold on to it. And so some of the other questions, and keep firing them away that we get all the time. What per door? What does that mean? I'm like, it's what the property costs per door, and that's kind of a comp kind of thing. It's just generally in that area per door, it's selling for X.
But per door depends on the size of the unit.
Yeah,
If
but
it's 3 bedrooms or 1
It does,
bedroom,
it's just
one
another
door.
off the hip number though,
Yeah.
like, oh, I know, and, well, it was, in Mesa they're selling about 200 per door. Okay, that makes sense,
Mhm.
right? Doesn't mean that a 3-bedroom in there
Yeah, would be
would
the
sell
same
for
as
3, or, a
Yeah.
1-bedroom for 1, it's just kinda like, it's another off the hip kind of number.
Everyone kind of finds their own little rhythm of
Yeah.
what they like to look at for those quick references
Yeah.
because we can't
For the
sit through
swiping.
100 properties every day.
Yeah.
I personally like per door. I don't know why. It's just what stuck with me for years. So if I'm looking through multifamily and stuff and I'm like, holy shit, it's 150 grand a door, and then I look at it, I'm like, oh,
In Douglas.
it's in freaking Arizona City. Okay, now I don't want it.
Yeah.
But it got my attention. And so
And-
that's kind of like whether it's your GRM or your cap or your NOI.
It's the investor's preference, or, the preference on how they're looking for properties. And your 4 units and under are gonna have a higher per door than your big units. And that's just because they're more easily to attain.
One question.
Yeah.
So, let's say in a given building, the apartment, if you're going to buy on an individual basis, it's gonna cost, let's say, $400,000.
Okay,
It's a nice apartment. But if you, as a investor, if you go and buy the whole apartment, are you gonna get a better deal? Maybe $350,000, $300,000 per door, or it's pretty much still same as what you would get.
yeah, still same,
Still
because it's on the performance of the building, which it all boils down to how much rent can I get. You can get more rent in Scottsdale than you can in Arizona City.
Okay.
So the buildings in Scottsdale are going to be worth more than the ones in Arizona City, even if they're the same, even if you buy, the whole building, because you can't buy part of the building anyway. You have to buy the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I can get more rent, then it's gonna be more per door. No, there's no discount for buying the whole thing because this is how it performs.
Right, so since there's no discount, and you say cap rate maybe 4 or 5%,
Yeah,
which is less than the interest they're paying. So I guess the only hope that the investor is buying on is it will appreciate in future, right?
so yes, so I get calls, off of websites and stuff, and I'll hear them talking about, cash flow and cash on cash and things like that. And it's usually because they were following bigger pockets, that's where they were getting their advice from. We are not a cash flow market. We are an appreciation market. If you are looking for a cash flow market, that's like Ohio, Tennessee was for a while, right? But it's not us. We are an appreciation market. That's why the REITs come here and they're still paying cash for that stuff. They don't care that it's 2, 3, 4, 5 cap rate because they know it's going to keep going up. They're paying attention to what's going on in the valley, and there's a lot going on.
So that's why companies like Rise 48 or
Oh yeah, Zach.
yeah, Zach, they were buying so many apartment complexes, but I think it's slowed down now, right?
I don't know. His acquisition this year is still. I just chatted with him actually last week. So his acquisition is still pretty good. Their model is a syndication model.
Yep.
And they, I know initially he would like personally just call building owners and try and buy their building. So what they try and do is buy an undervalue, get all their investors together, and then add value to it to then have it as a performing asset. And then whatever he's doing with it at the time, selling it or holding it, whatever, he's worked that out with the syndication group. But yeah, I don't think he hasn't slowed down. He has shifted markets, so he's been picking stuff up in Texas. He's just a local investor.
But they were saying, I mean, they were mainly banking on rents rising, which happened quite a bit during COVID times. But now it's not rising as much.
Yeah.
So whatever he's promising to his investors,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but what I read in an article that he's not able to perform. So him and companies like that are in trouble, and some may be,
Because what they were
Going
selling
value.
was a performa,
yeah.
right? And that's a lot of speculation. And they're regulated, when you're a syndicator, you're regulated by the SEC because you are promising people a return on their investment. And if you cannot make what you promised, what you put in writing, not only could you get sued by your investors, you can get in trouble with the federal government. There's a lot going on, which again is why the performa is so important and that being conservative and everything else. And then what value add, like what a owner like Zach does, is it means like the unit's dated, it needs, some spit and shine, maybe the exterior needs to be cleaned up, maybe it needs a playground for kids, they're adding something to the building that then brings the rents up, because it's always gonna come back to how much can I rent this building for. But Zach's model too is he does C-class buildings, which is like working class type buildings. Yeah.
No, which is smart. I mean, adding value by providing all these amenities. But
Kind of. Yeah.
I think what he has promised is I'm telling you what I heard. It's probably now his goals are kind of seem too lofty.
Could be, especially with some of his newer acquisitions. I'd say if he purchased it a few years ago, he's probably still doing okay. But if it was last year, but then again, the dividends that he would be paying out are still in the future. So I'm sure he's still holding his breath and hoping for some positive outcomes.
It's mainly the balloon payments that will.
Yeah, because those are, like I said, there's investors out there that they're just holding their money and they're just waiting for those 3 and 5 year marks to see if the fire sales start happening. And that's what could happen. It could be a fire sale if if the balloon comes due and you can't pay for it. What do? You try and hurry up and sell your building, and if the interest rates are high, then you can't get what you thought you could get for it. Yeah. Did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, is that why it's typically like a 5-year pro forma as opposed to a year-over-year?
Yeah, is because very commonly they're going to sell it in 2 to 5 years no matter what. Yeah, you don't see a lot of huge apartment buildings that they hold on to for 20 years. It's not how it works, because you have to refinance it at 5 years anyway or pay it off. So it's like, I'm going to refinance. Why not just go get a new building? Why not do a full 1031 exchange and work my way up?
Year to year is pretty volatile. It's not going to give you an idea of what your expenses
Right.
are really going to be. Maybe you didn't have maintenance that year. Maybe it was actually 0, but probably not. Then maybe the next year your maintenance was 20%.
Yeah.
Something big would happen.
Maybe that you're deferred.
The furniture.
Yeah. Thanks for all your questions, guys. Is there more? Anybody else?
What are you seeing active in this environment right now? Things are like the institutional investors, the syndicators, and everything like that.
Yeah.
They're really slowed down from what I've been seeing and everything.
I agree with
Are
you.
you seeing any asset classes moving, like 10 to 20 units, 50 units and higher, 200 units and
Well,
higher?
like, for
Is there
example,
anything that you see moving?
I have a 4-unit listed that, like, last year I could have sold in my sleep, and it's like not moving, and it's priced under market. It's, you know, a lot, but it just
Do you sleep?
the appetite isn't there. People are really nervous. The interest rates are high, and so it's not a lot is moving. The 35 unit I've had for sale has been quite a while, and it's, I mean, partly because it wants too much, but because 2 years ago that wouldn't have been too much. You know what I mean? So I'm seeing the syndicators aren't moving for the same reason. Everybody's just super cautious right now, it feels like. I was just saying, I did a search yesterday for units over, anything over 100 units in the metro, and there's only 14 for sale.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's pretty low. I saw you.
Do you see any seller financing?
Sometimes. A lot of sellers, the reason why they're shying away from seller financing is because then you can't 1031 it. And you're subject to the capital gains on that initial deposit,
Yeah.
on, you know, on the money that comes in every year. And that could make sense for, like, say, I've owned this building for 50 years, I'm 100 years old, and I'd like my kids to get some of this money, so I'm gonna set up a seller financing so that I can, you know, pay my bills every month and get a little chunk of change. Like, I don't really care what I have to pay the government tomorrow because, you know, I might die. It doesn't really matter. But for the most part, if you're doing a seller financing, you can't do a 1031 exchange, and then you're like, if you have owned it for 50 years, you are hosed. So they want to make sure that they can cash out so that they can either go to the next building or do whatever makes most sense for that. Some of them put it into a DST or, you know, something that's a little bit more passive.
What's a DST?
Oh God, that's a
Oh,
whole other
class.
That's a whole other class. The short version is it's a Delaware statutory trust, which structure-wise looks very similar to a syndication, but it's different. But you can 1031 exchange your funds into a DST and get very passive income.
I would love to hear your opinions on what's going to happen in the next couple of years. You think that all these investors
The crystal ball.
Yeah.
are standing by the fence, and
Yeah.
is commercial market going to go down a lot, or
Well, the commercial market, that's a really broad stroke, right? Because there's
multifamily?
Okay, multifamily. So, all I know is facts, right? The facts are that balloons will be coming. Interest rates don't seem to be going down. They are not going to be able to refinance that building. It will not perform. No one is going to lend on it. So then what? We could see a fire sale of those buildings. We could see, cap rates starting to trade super high again. Maybe they're breaking even because, like my current seller I have, he paid 6.5. If he needs to raise his cap rate to a price that makes sense, it's probably going to be about $7 million. That's it. Like, that's basically breaking even by the time you pay me and anything else. So I don't think we're going to see a huge crash because rents also did increase so much that the cap rates will still make sense, but I think we may see a lot of people just breaking even in a couple of years. I don't know if the big fire sale all the investors are looking for is actually going to happen, but
Well, no matter what, there's
So-
still gonna be demand, because we still have tons of companies coming here, we still have tons of people coming here, we still need housing,
yeah.
and it's still a shortage.
But
When
you
you
see
still have
every
1 to 3
single
years for
corner
rates to come
of
down.
construction, every
Yeah.
single space,
And maybe
you see
5.
And we still can't
apartment
keep it all
Depending
building.
on when they launch.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. Yes.
So the big question that I'm hearing around is, what is the impact of those huge boxes that they are building on the market?
What's the impact of them?
Of those huge buildings that they are
Like
building everywhere today.
The industrial ones or the
No,
multifamily
the
ones? Okay.
multifamily, like
So those
all the
are-
rental.
Those are Class A buildings. right?
Class
That
A,
mean-
yeah.
Yep, that means they're brand new, they're sexy,
Yeah.
they're,
They're
super
fitness,
shiny. Oh
they're
yeah, they've got
cool,
all the
spa.
things. Then you have B, which is in the middle,
Yeah.
and then you have C, which is we'll call working class. Like
Yes.
picture your Mesa building, right? The janitor lives there. They have a couple kids, like they can barely afford, usually check to check. Your Class A, your Scottsdale, it's somebody that's working there, they're making more money, they can afford the rent. Those buildings were built. Everybody always has an exit strategy. That's the other thing I, question this, fire sale coming. The exit strategy for a lot of those is they will sell them as condos. They will just, that's what they'll do, they'll just divide them up and now they'll sell them and they'll start selling off pieces of them and that's how they'll recover from that. And we know if a building in Scottsdale is $400,000 per door, but it's a brand new sexy condo,
Yeah, it can
that's
be
gonna
more.
sell for more than 400, so they'll be fine.
Okay, but what is their impact on the rental? Because I have a client
Yeah,
that has a very nice condo
okay.
in an older complex
Mhm.
in the Biltmore area.
Okay.
Okay? He cannot get rent in because
Oh, he can't
everyone
get a
is
tenant?
yeah,
Yeah.
because like everyone is living in those old buildings. That's his assessment,
Mhm.
and moving to those shiny buildings. They prefer to pay a little bit more but get all the amenities
Yeah.
and so on. So he's thinking to sell his condo.
Okay.
And my question, is it just something that he sees or we see it all over the time? Like from your experience?
I have not seen it all over the board.
Okay.
There's going to be an individual for each asset type. And just like selling a property, it's just gonna come down to price. You charge enough and people will move it, whether they wanna be there or not. If you charge too much, then they're just gonna pass, because for $200 more, they could go get a gym and
Exactly.
everything else and
Yeah.
get all the super sexy stuff that condo has.
So it's all a question of price.
Yeah,
But
really.
there's enough tenants for it.
There really is, and then think about it, the Taiwanese semiconductor
Yeah,
plant, just
that-
one building
Yeah.
is coming, that's 80,000 jobs
Yes.
for one, where are they gonna go?
They said the first
Yeah.
80,000.
Yeah, fine. That's not even like the ancillary, businesses that are gonna come in to support that and all those jobs, like, we are, and if you've looked at like the residential market, there's only like 10,000 houses on the market. Like
Yeah, there's
inventory is really low everywhere. So I haven't seen it. I don't think it's gonna keep booming at 30% like it was, but we have to be careful with it, and they have to keep building this, so we have room for people. I just tell you, sell it, yeah, let's sell it. Sell it and let's 1031 it into a little duplex for you or something. Yeah. Any other questions?
So where's the opportunity for us?
As real estate agents, stuff like that, right? Talk to your clients. So when I talk to a client, when they call me, whether to buy, sell, whatever, my first question is, what are your goals? What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? In order for me to put you into the best investment, the best type, the best asset class, whatever that looks like, what are your goals? If your goals are to flip, well, then there's not very much opportunity right now still. If your goals are long-term, I want to give it to my kids, like, okay, well, since we're an appreciation market, let's go to one of the more growing areas and, let's look at stuff like that. We can't tell them what to do, but we can present, facts, right? The facts are, the city of Apache Junction is building 12,000 houses as we speak. That means room for opportunity in terms of commercial, because they do not have enough restaurants to support that, enough shopping to support that, and that is a fact. So regardless of how you interpret what I'm saying, you can't say, well, she told me. No, I just presented facts.
How many?
Currently 12,000, but they just annexed 245 square miles. So there are more coming. The other fact, where they annexed it, so it's Apache Junction, Mesa, Queen Creek, LG just bought that site. They're gonna build an LG plant. That's another fact. Is that a good area to invest in? Probably. Would that be good to share with our buyers? Probably. Whether they're buying the dirt there or a building or a duplex or a condo just to have something to appreciate. So that's where the opportunity is. be very educated about our market, our areas, and what that means for our buyers and sellers so that they can make good decisions based on their goals.
Just
Yes.
piggyback off that, I
Yeah.
just went to a class for a financial advisor, and he's like, you know what? I have my clients generally come from California and Washington, and what are they trying to avoid? What do they want to do with their money? They want to not pay taxes. They want to hide their money in a property and not pay taxes. And we're in an appreciation market. It's just going to go up. So that's that's one thing that's helped me out as far as like talking about that to my people. And like I'm into multifamily. That's my bread and butter. And but you gotta tell them like it's not all like it's work unless you have like a property manager and a
Right,
handyman
yeah.
and all that stuff. But
It's not mailbox money.
it's still you're making money. You're helping them take care of their money. It's an investment.
Right.
So that's
Which-
you need to know. Like you said, you gotta be you need to do your research and you gotta know your stuff.
Which again goes back to the first question. What are your goals? What are the short-term goals? What are the long-term goals? Because if it's long-term, well then yeah, I'm going to do something like Apache Junction. That makes a lot of sense because long-term, it's not going to be tomorrow, but in 10 years, watch that landscape change.
Well,
Do you see much future in West Valley?
In Grass Valley.
West.
Oh, West Valley.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, yeah, if you just look as you're driving down the freeway, what's going on, right? That's just, yeah.
Yeah.
But think about your asset classes. Do you think a Class A glass, super sexy Scottsdale type building is going to do well there? No, it's going to be more your C-class
Only in
worker.
Glendale, because they have that $1 billion entertainment project.
Yeah, but who's going to work there? Who's going to be living in Glendale that's going to be working in the entertainment area?
Yes.
Are they going to be making $150,000
No.
a year?
No.
Unless
Right.
it's north,
Right.
they will be.
So,
I mean, it's a pretty big area of West Valley.
yeah.
But where do you see mostly, growth happening?
Oh, it's definitely like Goodyear, Buckeye. Buckeye's on everybody's list right now.
Yeah.
Avondale, Levine, that whole kind of like section down there.
Right.
What's that,
TSMC.
no, Carla, I'm sorry. What's the place up near Goodyear that's supposed to be another like little city within Goodyear that they're
Litchfield
supposed to be
Park?
building? Litchfield Park.
No, it's the one that
Verando.
Bill Gates was supposed to build.
Verando?
No, it hasn't
Level?
actually been
It hasn't
formed
actually been
yet.
formed yet. They
Oh,
gave
the
it
one
to
that
the
city that may be
That's-
coming.
yeah.
Oh, when
Right.
Goodyear came and talked to us?
Yes. Do you know Brooksville, Brooksdale?
So
Brooks?
there's a lot of cities that come and talk to us. They come to our team meetings, they tell us what's going on, they address their water issues or lack of water issues. Well, some of them, so it's like a per city use and they can like bank the water. So like, for example, in Apache Junction, they're like, we have yours banked. Okay. Like, so they're fine. And then other cities, like the city of Chandler, they are infilled, like what, 93%? So that's a good opportunity if you can get a building there for inexpensive because you can't build anything else. It's all gonna be redevelopment from this point forward.
Most cities, they'll come talk to us, but when we call them, most of the time, they're like, like the best you can ever get out of a city is maybe.
Yeah.
It's either no or maybe. When we call them, you say, hey, we want to put this project and we want to put it here. Maybe, just do a site plan, but whatever. Or it's no, never going to happen, quit wasting your time. We have a spot in Chandler. The city literally calls me every week, where are you at? Where are you at?
Yeah.
Are you going to build it? Are you going to build it? Are you going to build it? And I'm like, we're trying to build it. But it comes down to money. And so we're trying to get the money, so that just doesn't happen. But Chandler, it's happening because they don't have any more land. They have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And they're because of that, kind of like the landlords you were talking about, they're super picky. They're like, yeah, we don't like that. We're not going to let you put that there.
Yeah.
Well, like even across the street from our office in Chandler, there's a big, huge swath of dirt, and initially it was going to be all multifamily. Now they have a rezoning meeting that's happening to make it into mixed use, so they want to put retail on the ground floor and do residential on top. So it's interesting how those things are changing as well with how the market has changed. I mean, the retail market right now is so tight. Good luck getting any of your clients in. I mean, it's super, super tough. So I mean, it also depends on what's happening with the market, what the trends are, and all these
And
things.
the final authority is city council. So you can get all that through the city, but if the city council doesn't pass it, then it doesn't matter all the work you just did. So it's really important.
That you have really good people that can bribe them that aren't.
I was going to say, make sure you vote. and, vet your candidates so that they're ones that are,
That is a big
pro redevelopment, pro building.
Most people don't know who they're voting for. We know who they are based
Oh, yeah.
on exactly what they do with commercial products.
Well, another thing to know too is that most of the time with the election, all of your city people are voted in the very, very first portion of the election.
In the
In the
preliminary.
preliminaries. So make sure you are voting in the preliminaries, because that really makes a difference, because it usually doesn't go to the
Right.
final election.
Because, say,
Because
It might not be.
a city
opposed.
council person,
Yeah.
if they get a certain amount of votes in the preliminaries, they don't even have to go to
They're
the
automatic.
second voting option. So
So
you
that's-
may have been like, oh, I didn't like that candidate. How'd they even get in? Because you should have voted in the prelims.
Yeah, so that's just real important to know, because I didn't know that
Yeah.
myself until we had a client that she was
On city
running, and then
council.
we were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What did you just tell me? Oh.
Yeah.
Back to my civil war with my wife, she's super anti-apartments in Gilbert, and I'm super pro-apartments in Gilbert, and so we.
You live in Gilbert?
opposingly
He does.
in Gilbert.
Yeah.
So,
How do you like the area by the new semiconductor plant?
North
TSMC?
Phoenix?
Yeah, I-17 and 303.
What do we have?
Promising?
Yeah, if you can
If you
buy
can buy
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
All gone.
Yeah.
Or
That's
it's
all
it's
spoken
state
for a long
land,
time.
it's purchased, or it's in a floodplain.
Yeah.
All of it.
All of
And
it.
if it's not, it's already master plan.
Yeah.
It's gone, gone,
We get
gone.
calls every day, hey, I want to be by that new plant. Yeah, you and everybody else.
We need a way back
I can
machine.
get you 15 miles away.
Yeah, like if you want investment, like I
I
said,
can
you
push
have
you
to be
Wickenburg all
thinking
day
way
long.
far ahead.
Wickenburg.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
okay, you wanna tell me that?
Yeah.
Well, we're in London's
Yeah.
and some others do certain things. So our client is looking to do a multifamily, but he wants something nice. Yeah. No, I'm here, I own it, I can create that.
I do.